Welcome to Video Store Rejects, the Director's Chair Edition. I'm your host, Cody House, and with me is Colin Smith. He's back, and this episode kind of started back when this movie came out. You had come on to talk about Pinocchio, and I had said James Cameron was the director we had covered before. And you volunteered to talk about Avatar: The Way of the Water, but I kind of wanted to wait till it was readily available for everyone to watch, in case not only just for spoiler talks, but just to get kind of the hype around it over and done with. And so it dropped on Disney Plus a couple of weeks ago, and you are here to discuss the movie with me.
Yes, thanks for having me. It was good to get a chance to rewatch it again. I only saw it once in cinemas, so it was nice to be able to rewatch it and have some of my thoughts evolve over, have it since the first time I saw it.
Yeah, same here. I saw it when it came out in December. I took my wife and mother-in-law to see it in IMAX. I guess it was sort of a Christmas present for my mother-in-law because she liked the first one a lot. She's very much in touch with her indigenous ancestry because my wife and her family are of Hispanic Latin descent, but anyone that originates somewhere from this section of North America and Mexico where I live, a lot of the Hispanic population is also heavily indigenous as well. They're not just Latin, they're also indigenous Americans as well. So she really likes these movies, and so I think she really enjoyed seeing it. So he did it. James Cameron did it. Everyone always keeps saying it's gonna bust. He's gonna eventually bust, but he keeps outdoing himself. And I mean, we should be surprised. The man is what, the king of the sequels? Aliens, Terminator 2. Like, he knows how to make a movie and put his money where his mouth is, despite what people may think of him personally or his personality. Like, he's got the talent to back it up, and people go and see the movie.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember there was talk, just like there was talk when the first one came out about how would it be successful or would it be a bust? Just like there was talk when Titanic came out. All of that is the same thing, and the pattern just repeats itself. And then the film went on to be hugely successful. I'm not sure it really was. I mean, it was very financially successful. I'm not sure it was the cultural phenomenon that the last one was, but it still was a huge hit. Um, and paved the way for him to continue on with the series that he wants to make, for sure. So yeah, good on him. I have to, I try to support Canadian directors. So
That's right,
great
he
to
is
see
Canadian.
his success, for sure. And may not be my favorite Canadian director right now, but I think Villeneuve gets that prize. But he's he's definitely one of the most successful directors ever of all time. So good on him.
Yeah, so what are your overall thoughts on James Cameron? Because I would agree this one is probably not, it's definitely not the cultural phenomenon the original was, but part of that's because that was something completely different and new we'd never seen before.
Right.
But I do get tired of people being like, oh, name a character from the movie or a line. Like, I don't even know if that matters with these movies. I think it's more just the experience of watching them.
Yeah, I think the way you look at I think the way these movies are maybe different than other popular franchise movies. I don't think it works the same way as a Star Wars or a Marvel film or any of the big, franchises, right? I think the what you get out of it is different. It's certainly even more of a four quadrant. I hate that term, but that kind of movie that sort of can appeal to almost every demographic in some way. And it just, yeah, I think it lands differently. So James Cameron's made some of my favorite movies. I love Terminator and Terminator 2. I'm one of the people who's more of an Alien fan than an Aliens fan, but I mean, I love both movies. I mean, it was great that he took that concept and made it something different. Didn't just repeat the what the first film did. So I totally appreciate that. Um, he's made a number of films that I don't know if I dislike any of his films, but but there's some that he's made that just don't get me. I think I still think Titanic holds up. I think it's sort of unfairly maligned by a lot of people. I think I watched it again recently on the anniversary and went to see it, and I really enjoyed seeing it again on the big screen. So I think he's definitely a talented director. As I said, he's not one of my all-time favorites, but he's made a lot of movies that I really like. So, and I enjoyed The Way of Water. I was surprised. I was a little worried that I would get bored or that it would drag. And I felt that, I mean, I've got some critiques of it, but I don't, but I enjoyed it when I saw it, and I enjoyed it when I watched it again. So do I think it's one of the 10 best pictures of the year though? Come on, Oscars, what are you doing? It's definitely not in the top 10 of the best movies of the year. That was just weird. I think if it had come out earlier in the year, it would not have been nominated for the big prizes at the Oscars. But I still enjoyed it. I had a good time, and I will watch the next one whenever. It's been pushed back, but I'll watch it whenever it finally gets out. So, what about yourself?
So, yeah, I would be with you. First off, I do slightly prefer Alien to Aliens, but it's only like a hair. I think they're both great movies. I just like the more horror aesthetic of Alien, the haunted house, as opposed to the roller coaster. But they're both great movies, and he made a completely different movie in the same franchise. I pretty much like all of his movies except for his first film, which he kind of got fired from, which is Piranha 2.
Right, which I can't say I've seen, so I'll have to. I won't be able to say anything about that.
You're not missing anything. The only thing that is good in it is the underwater sequences, so that's probably all the stuff Cameron shot as a movie.
What is it with water and James Cameron?
He's obsessed with it.
He really is.
Hasn't he been to the bottom of the ocean like several times? In fact, I think
he has. Maybe that, and I mean with the Abyss and Titanic and like, yeah, something about water that just speaks to him.
He's drawn to it somehow, but in fact, that's where kind of this plot of this movie comes from. Is like, so James Cameron makes Titanic, wins a bunch of accolades, it becomes the biggest movie of all time. And then he spends 12 years before Avatar comes out, and he does like 2 documentaries. He goes to the ocean. I think goes to the ocean several times. I think he did 2 documentaries. And then there's a 13-year gap between this one, because this kept getting delayed, and then reshoots, and then Disney buys Fox, and then Disney, who doesn't want it coming out and competing with the Star Wars movie, and then COVID happens.
Yeah.
And apparently his family set him down and had like an intervention, and they're like, you need to be more proactive in our lives. Like, you need to like kind of be like seeing what's going on. Like, you're not being an active husband and father. Like, you're spending all your time and money and energy off doing these wild and crazy things. And if you think about it, it's kind of what the plot of this movie is about. Like, it's about family, and like,
right,
which is an interesting thing for him to do, but I think that's why I like this one because it was a little bit different from the first movie, even though it's similar. And I think some of the complaints I had about the first one are not in this one, though I know a lot of people were upset about Kate Winslet playing like the chief's wife in this movie, even though Cliff Curtis is the chief of the Water Tribe and he is a indigenous member of New Zealand's whatever
Right,
their indigenous people are called over there.
right. Yeah, I agree. I think you're onto something there. I think it's nice that he took the concept and sort of evolved the characters, made it about family, made it about their outsider status a bit, both as having to uproot their lives and move to a different part. I like that the Navi are shown to not be monolithic and have multiple cultures and ways of living. So they explore some of that, but their outsider status of having to move to a different, to be part of a different culture and a different community, but also outsiders because they're of their, mixed background and what they face from that. So I thought he found a good way to continue the story for sure. It was interesting because I remember and it happened both times for me. The beginning act, the first act, feels rushed to me. I know that's a lot. It's a weird thing to say in a 3-hour movie, but the first act felt rushed. It felt like it was a whole lot of exposition being explained in voiceover. A lot of it was, oh, we're going to reset the status quo so it's back to being like what the first movie was about. So the first act didn't work for me super well, but once they got to the premise of this movie, um, then I got into it. Once they got to them being on the run, them being trying to adjust to the new culture, and them exploring their family dynamics, I think I got into it a lot more. So the first little bit stumbles for me, and I felt that when I first saw it, and I felt it again watching it at home. But then I got into it and found that that's when he started going into a new story, and that became far more interesting than just the background of resetting the human invasion and you know I guess being just all of the exposition. And I wonder if might have been a better way to get to that part. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but the first little bit doesn't work for me, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I completely agree with you, and I suspect part of that is because of how much of a gap in time it's been since the first movie. I think had this movie come out in 2014 when it initially was supposed to, I think we would have had a very different first act. But I think because it has been 13 years, and there were probably people in the theater that have not either seen the first movie or don't even remember everything that happened, or like don't. So it does kind of like, oh, hey, this is what's going on, blah blah blah. Because I think it did a good job of like not making requirement that you see the first movie to watch this.
Yeah, because even the parts that are connected to the old story, whether it's the villain character and his connection to Spider, or the connection between Sigourney Weaver's two characters, all of that is organic and makes sense within this movie without having seen the rest. I think they, and even the main family's story, it all makes sense within this movie. But it just felt awkward. Like I said, a lot of like voiceover exposition, and like almost like summarizing. So yeah, I guess I mean, who knows again what other option there might have been for him to be able to get this story going and be able to get into it.
I mean, I'm just guessing. It could also just be I'm James Cameron and I'm gonna make this movie as long as I want it to be.
Fair.
But
clearly it didn't stop people from seeing the movie. So
exactly. And the two things you mentioned, because those were the two things I was most worried about. Like, he did a good job of making that work. Like, they were saying, "Oh, Stephen Lang's coming back," and I'm like,
right,
he died.
right,
But like, they make us like give him a whole compelling arc, and like, him to be, because he's the same person but not the same person, because
right,
now he's in the body of a Na'vi avatar. And
right,
like, when you heard like Sigourney Weaver was going to be playing a teenage daughter to Jake Sully and Zoe Saldana's character, you're like, what is he doing? But it
right.
works.
Yeah,
And Sigourney Weaver is playing opposite, because there's this, we find out Stephen Lang's Colonel character had a son too, who's basically like, I guess he's like the Kevin Costner of this, even though that's Jake Sully, but he's like the Kevin Costner of this planet, because he's a human, but he's kind of living the way of the Na'vi,
right,
who is over 50 years younger than Sigourney Weaver, and playing like opposite her, because like,
right.
I feel like Cameron's building, because I know that his plan, I think, in the sequels is to be about the kids. I think.
Right. Yeah, I think
And
I've heard that too.
it looks like he's building a relationship between Sigourney Weaver's character and Spider, and then the son
Mm-hmm.
who survives, and the daughter of Cliff Curtis and Kate Winslet.
Right.
That's what it
Right.
looks like is happening in the.
It does. I mean, again, maybe one of the weaknesses in this movie is there's not a lot of plot that surprises anyone. Like, it all feels pretty predictable, and not in the worst way, but there's not like, I'm not sure that the story, well, like I said, the story is good enough to get you through it in a way that you're entertained, but I'm not sure it's a story that rocks your world or blows you away or shocks you or makes you. I mean, I mean, I do like the idea. Like, there's positive messaging in the movie, and I think that this movie does a better job of handling some of that than the clumsy way the first one did. I think I always said that I think the first one was well intentioned in terms of its analogies and as sort of morals to the story, but it kind of did it in a way that was heavy-handed and potentially a little white saviory. But I
Mm-hmm.
think this film does a better job of sort of telling some of its sending some of its messaging. But
Well,
again, I don't know if the story was one where I was on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen. Like, it was more like playing out how I expected things to go, if that makes sense.
yeah, totally. And neither one of these films is like groundbreaking in the point of storytelling
Right.
and
That's not the strength.
dialogue. Yeah,
No.
and in fact, people have made comments that like even in Titanic and other Cameron movies, like the dialogue is kind of you know, spotty or not that great to begin with. But another thing I did like better in this one was like what the humans were after. So what are those? Are they called the Tacoon? Those sea creatures that they're hunting?
Right. Right.
Like, they're abstracting something from them because it supposedly stops people from aging as fast.
Right.
Like, that makes more sense that humans would be out like killing and harming these animals to live longer than whatever unobtainium was.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot. When I was rewatching Avatar, I was like, oh, that's really embarrassing. um, when I was rewatching it to prepare myself for this. So yeah, I mean, again, it's a little bit of a heavy-handed metaphor, like the idea that, I mean, because obviously the humans are stand-ins for sort of Western colonialists, and this idea of hunting creatures to extinction for and sort of in a wasteful way that isn't about using hunting something and then using the entirety, using everything that you can, and honoring that. Like it's still pretty heavy-handed, but I mean, it's a good point. Like, it's not wrong, so that's good. Give them that. And emotionally, I think he makes you feel it. I think that they do a really good job of letting you see and letting you feel the really what's so horrible about the way the humans are, trying to obtain this, right? And you feel it, and that's an important thing. Like, it's quite visceral, and I think that's part of the reason the movie works as entertaining as it is because it does make you feel. Yeah, it makes you feel all of those things, which quite effectively. So that's good.
Yeah, I think he's very good at making things emotional. Of course, the score helps. And I mean, just the effects alone are beautiful. Like, the whole stuff in the water is gorgeous.
Yes.
Like, I would be fine if the whole movie was about the sun and that whale
Yeah.
creature just being friends.
Right. I was thinking about this. It's like, it's actually kind of too bad because I remember the first one felt so revolutionary because we really hadn't seen anything like it before. And I know that this one has taken the technology to a whole nother level, just like that one, but I don't think you necessarily feel it in the same way as you did when you watched the first one. Like, I think that we see enough movies now, and yeah, there's a lot of bad special effects, and there's a lot of movies that get critiqued for the special effects being spotty or shady or rush. There's the whole thing about the rushing of the visual effects processes. This one really is incredible when you sit down and watch it, but I think that we're just so numb to that now that watching this one, you don't necessarily come away feeling like you've witnessed something revolutionary in the industry like you did with the first one. And I think that's a bit of a shame because it really is incredible. And and like I said, so many movies are not, so many movies cheap out on that because we just, sort of expect it now. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a, this movie maybe doesn't get as many points as it should for just how visually stunning it really, really is. So I appreciate that you commented on that because I think it is important to point that out for this film.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what took so long was the technology of what he wanted to do, especially with all the water sequences, wasn't where it needed to be.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And when we get all these critiques of the, you hear about the, the kind of work conditions that visual effects artists are going under to meet deadlines and all of the shortcuts and then the critiques of how the visual effects look. This is the opposite of that. This is James Cameron waiting and delaying and making sure that everything is 100% or more than 100%, right? Like, this is the opposite kind of filmmaking from most of the big blockbusters. So I definitely want to give it points for all of that.
And that's another thing. Like, I am guilty of liking a lot of the IP franchises, blockbusters, and enjoying them for what they are. But very few of them nowadays allow a filmmaker, even of James Cameron's stature, to just come in and just do whatever they want at an astronomical budget, and it's just from their mind. It is from their mind. This is all him. I mean, it's not all him. There's so many, animators.
Yeah, movies are definitely a collaboration. They're not. I'm not a big subscriber to the auteur theory. I think that the director can definitely be a leader, but it's definitely a team effort.
But there's a vision in this that you don't really get in a lot of blockbusters.
No,
And
and when you think about the amount of money that's on the line and the ownership of certain IPs, and I think that's limited, like whether it's DC or Marvel or Star Wars, like these are, there's so much money invested in these things. And something that's different here is that this is just James Cameron's idea that he, was able to turn into such a big success. So he gets to control it. And the closest analog I can think of to this, I was thinking about this recently, is potentially what we're going to see with Rebel Moon and Zack Snyder, right? This idea that he can create a world and a story that's just his, that he gets to do what he wants with, because there isn't the same kind of control that the studio is going to want to have over their property, right? Their intellectual property in the same way.
side
And
tangent
yeah,
for a second.
yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is Rebel Moon basically scraps of what his Star Wars movie was going
that's
to
what I
be?
understand. He pitched a Star Wars story. They turned it down. So he said, okay, well, I'll just make it and not have it be Star Wars. But I mean, good on him, because again, like this, he can take, he can make the world exactly what he wants without having to sort of worry about the pressures of meeting a certain IP's, criteria and the rest of it. And James Cameron is demonstrating that in a way that few filmmakers of on this kind of budget. I mean, smaller budget filmmakers get to do that all the time, I think. So, this is James Cameron. And, for better or for worse, you can, I'm not trying to equate James Cameron with, a lot of smaller indie darling directors that people love, but I mean, he is basically making exactly the movie that he wants, exactly the way that he wants, without interference really from the studio around what goes and what doesn't. And so he just uses intellectual property that he himself has created, so that there's no other interest in telling him what to do with it, right? And so, for better or for worse, that's what he's running with.
Yeah, and as long as he keeps, making money, like even though this one wasn't as big as the first one, it still made like over
Well, it
$1 billion.
was still really big.
I think it's the third highest grossing movie of all time, or the fourth highest grossing movie of all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I
He's
think
got
it's definitely up there. The thing about that's always tough, though, is that when you don't adjust for inflation, you're really not measuring how successful it is, because ticket prices just cost that much more now, right? So yeah, in terms of budgets and real dollars, it pays for it. But the reality is that, a lot of films have sold way more tickets than this one has. And so, you know, depends on what you're, if you're just talking about budgets and paying bills, then yeah, then it's the third highest whatever. But if you adjust for inflation, then there's a lot of films that have sold way more tickets. So
Well, also with the price of everything, it's a lot easier for movies to make this much money. I'm pretty sure all the Jurassic World movies made $1 billion worldwide, but I can't tell you what happened in any of those
yeah,
movies.
exactly. Yeah, I think you know it's interesting. It's there was talk about it needing to make a certain amount, or it would be like it could have been one of the biggest films of all time and still been a flop because of how much it cost. Right? It didn't. It made a profit, so good for them. And it's interesting. We're at this point now where films can make tons of money but still end up being considered failures because they didn't quite make enough, right? And so the fact that this one had to have made as much as it did to be successful, I always thought that's not necessarily saying a lot for the film industry. which is why
Right.
the horror movies are also, there's so many of them, is because they can churn them out for like a few $1 million, and then they can make a bunch of money and be profitable, even no matter what, right? But these superhero epics and other big budget action, they cost so much to make that if they don't make, like, millions of people can see them and they're still failures because they can't make their budgets back and marketing back and all the rest of that.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. Like, and they're like, this movie made $500 million, but it's a flop.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know.
like what?
I know.
But yeah, it is kind of wild. But I guess it's just his stature and his reputation. Because when Disney acquired Fox, they could have totally just dropped these movies, because this was a Fox investment. These Avatar sequels.
Yeah.
But I guess they're like, well, we might as well see if he can do it. And yeah, now granted they just pushed like all these sequels back, and people are joking like, is the Earth even going to be around by the time Avatar 5 comes out and everything? But I don't even know, though. I also heard he didn't want to direct all of them, but if he's not directing them, I don't want to see these movies, honestly, because
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, this is one of those series that feels like it's just about James Cameron. I mean, who knows? Maybe someone else could come along and make a great movie and in the Avatar world, and they could make a Rogue One equivalent, right? Like, who knows? I don't know. Maybe someone could, but it does sort of feel like this is such a project for him, right? That it's it seems uh it does feel like it should be him making these movies. I mean, I guess I just don't know.
yeah, that's the only way I would want to be interested. Also, it's also kind of sad that the only two films he's directed in this century are both Avatar films. But it's what he wants to do with himself, so I guess more power to him. More power to him, but I would like to see him, like, when he was attached to Alita Battle Angel before it went to Robert Rodriguez. I was like, well, that seems like something he would do and be interesting, but he's with Avatar, because I'd like to see him do like something else while he's still able to make movies.
Yeah, I would too. I was just looking up. So if you go to worldwide, Avatar remains the highest grossing film worldwide. Avatar: The Way of Water is the third, and Titanic is the fourth, with Endgame being the second. So the non-James Cameron movie in the top
So he has 3 out of the 5 highest grossing movies of all time.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
If you look at worldwide, for sure. And so yeah, I mean, he gets to do what he wants, I guess, right?
Yeah.
When you go to domestic, Avatar's only fourth. So if you just look at the
because that's still market, The Force Awakens, right? The Force Awakens.
Yeah, Force Awakens was the highest, and Endgame still number 2. It seems to be. It always stuck at number 2, and then Way of Water is 7.
Okay.
When you look at domestic, it was only 684,000. So, million, by the way, 684 million.
So, only.
Yeah, I know. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously the domestic market isn't all of it, and they're making so much more money overseas now with all of these. So it's definitely was profitable and definitely was a success, and he's going to get to make more. And my understanding is he's already made most of 3, so it'll be interesting to see how much more work there is to do on that one. It's not coming out till
2025.
Okay.
It's going to be a 3-year gap now between each sequel at this point.
That'll feel like no time after.
I mean, compared to 13 years, yeah, nothing. Okay, 3 years, fine.
That is if it actually comes out at that point. Who knows, right?
Right. Lord, yeah, that's true.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you mentioned already, the relationship with the whale creatures. So maybe talk a little bit about what your favorite, what you like most about the movie.
Well, other than that and the family dynamic, because it makes it less white savory, because it seems like it's still Jake Sully is still the protagonist, but now he is so much into the culture. He is a Na'vi now, and like focusing it on his children a little bit more. and introducing, like you said, like where there's more parts of Pandora, there's different tribes and cultures. I liked seeing that aspect of it. Also, I thought it was funny when I told my wife Kate Winslet was in the movie. She's like, "Well, I didn't even know that was Kate Winslet."
I know. I actually had to remind myself at one point too because I had forgotten. I mean, it shows you what a great actress she is. But for me, is Jake Sully the main character? Like, in some ways, I feel like his character. I mean, maybe. It just really does feel like he's shifting a lot of the emotional weight and a lot of the screen time to the younger generation of characters. Sigourney Weaver's character feels very central to most of the story, and
Hmm.
the two boys. Um, I think that I'm not. If you were to ask me who is the central character, I'm not sure Jake Sully would be the one that I would think of right away. I do I certainly find him one of the least interesting characters. So maybe that's just part of it. Like I still find Zoe Saldana's character so much more
Well,
compelling.
that's interesting because I think, and I don't want to talk bad about a performer or something, but I think that's partly because of Sam Worthington as a performer, which is wild because do you know who was originally supposed to be Jake Sully?
I'm not
And
sure
he
I ever
would,
heard that.
Cameron really wanted Matt Damon for this role.
Really?
And even offered him a percentage of like the box office of what the movie made,
Wow.
which would have been a
Wow.
totally different movie, right? Because of
Yeah.
just Matt Damon's, ability as an actor. But you think of like what Matt Damon movies would we not have gotten had he done Avatar, you know?
I just found that um what Zoe's character goes through is more interesting. Um, I also found the spider character really interesting, and I think I'm drawn to characters again. Also, Sigourney Weaver's character, and I think that I'm drawn to characters who are a bit caught between places, which is maybe surprising that I'm not as interested in Jake, but I like characters that are sort of stuck between places and have to navigate sort of the different different allegiance like pulls and emotional draws, and so I found those storylines sort of the most interesting to me, but certainly more than Jake's, which just felt really basic. His arc just feels really basic, and I don't even know if you can call it an arc.
It's not really an arc. It's I chose to change into this because, I didn't want to be in because he was paralyzed, so
Yeah, right.
and I became a father, I'm a husband. I tried to protect my family, and then I
Yeah,
realized that like running isn't going to help protect. Though there is one great scene that I like with Jake Sully, and it's after like the two sons get in a fight with the chief's son and
yeah,
some friends,
yeah,
and he's like, "I told you guys not to cause any trouble." And after he gets onto the younger son, who seems to be the one struggling the most in the story, which he's one of the central characters.
yeah, yeah.
He talks to the oldest one, and he's like, "What do the other guys look like?" And I'm like, "That's a total dad thing. Like, yeah, I'm gonna berate you for fighting, but
Yeah.
did you at least win?"
Right. Right.
But yeah, so many, yeah, and again, Zoe Saldana and Sigourney Weaver, they are very gifted and talented actors, so they're gonna make those character arcs work better because that's just their ability. Like
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver's a
Yeah.
70-year-old woman, but she believably plays like whatever was she supposed to be like maybe 14, 15, 16.
Yeah. Well, I imagine based it's the amount of time between the movies, right? Because
Yeah.
she would have had to have been conceived in the I mean, again, they don't really fully explain, who she is, but and maybe some of that'll come out, or maybe it'll always remain a mystery. But it's yeah, I thought she was great. I found the character really interesting. Um, again, as much as, so I, like I said, I think the characters that get the most sort of conflict to deal with, like personally, because it just feels like so many of them are just going through like sort of typical arcs, like even the even the sons, it's like, yeah, they're displaced teenagers who have to go and make life at a new school, and they're bullied by the people who are by the guys who used to be the cool people at the school, but of course they're coming in and supplanting some of that. And of course they develop a relationship with the beautiful girl at the new school. Like, it just feels so like we've seen it 100,000 times
Oh
before.
yeah.
um Whereas I found, again, Zoe's character's arc and struggling with, her anger and frustration, and being ripped from her culture, and trying to protect her family and not being able to, and then Spider's story of being torn between, not being Navi, but wanting so bad to be, but struggling to figure out who he is as a human, and especially once his connection to what human he's connected to, like all of that. I just
Hmm.
found their stories probably the most interesting, whereas a lot of the others felt pretty rote. um but again, not in a way that was like that I was rolling my eyes or bored. Like, it's just one of those things where I feel like the story was there to advance the real purpose of the movie, which is, wow, look at this amazing water, and look at this amazing whale creature, and you know what I mean. Like, it feels like the story was there more for that purpose than it was for really to advance a story. But I mean, like I said, it still was. I still tell people I wasn't bored when I sat there for 3 hours in the movie theater. I think I got up once to go pee, so that's not bad if in 3 hours. um, it did its job of entertaining me and giving me beautiful stuff to look at for 3 hours, right, and keeping me engaged enough in the story to make it through to the end, and enticing me enough that I'll want to watch the next one, see what happens next.
I think even Stephen Lang has an interesting arc as opposed to just being the over the top villain that he was in the first one, which he was very good, but
Yeah.
like they make, even because he's also, like you were mentioning, this character torn between
Yeah.
two worlds, because he has all his memories, but he's not that person anymore. And even though he's not technically Spider's father, he's,
Right.
because of those memories, he still has that paternal instinct.
Yeah, you're
And
right. I think his character also should get some. Yeah, his character is interesting because they don't just make him a repeat of his character in the first. You do see some growth, or maybe growth's not the right word, but difference and variation from who he was playing before. It's not the same character, and I think you do feel that he's not one dimensional. He's complicated enough. I'm not sure he's that complicated, but he's complicated enough that it's he's interesting as a villain.
exactly. Um, so you mentioned it, and I mean that's a complaint in the first one too about Jake Sully, but I was surprised, and I mean, there's no need to be spoiler. This, if people wanted to see this movie, they've probably seen it because it made lots of money, and it just now got on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to kill Jake Sully off. I thought that's where they were setting this
Mm.
up, and I was really surprised that he didn't die.
Yeah, again, that's the who did die, I felt was not a surprise.
Oh no, I'm not surprised they sacrificed one of the children, and of
Yeah.
course it was the older son,
Yeah.
because he's the more faithful and uh, dutiful and uh, listens child. He's not the rebellious
And he
child
gets to
as much.
be a tool for all the rest of them, like whether it's Zoe's character or the younger brother, or any of the children. Like, they all now have this motivation, and yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, it wasn't a surprise, but I could have seen that too. I could have seen it being Jake, or maybe he wanted to save that for the third. Maybe Jake will go down in a hero uh, blaze of glory in the third movie. Who knows? We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, he had a writer's room of different writers for all 4 sequels. So like they're all being written at the same time
Oh wow.
and picking elements of what will work for which one.
Right.
Um there's not a lot of trivia or like notes because I guess it's a newer movie, but apparently Kate Winslet did all her underwater stunts and she broke Tom Cruise's record for being underwater.
I heard
So
that. I
she
also heard that her involvement was actually quite limited, like maybe all within 1 month or something. And whereas so much of the
wow.
cast was there for quite extended periods of time, probably in and out, over the course of things. But I think I read somewhere that if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I thought I read somewhere that she said that she kind of came in, did her bits, and left, and it was over fairly quickly. So
Oh wow.
who knows? Yeah.
Um, that being said, what actor would you like to see in the Avatar universe?
Oh God, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, it's hard because, um, they're not like you said with Kate Winslet. Often, and unless you're thinking about it, you're not really thinking you're seeing her. Um, she's that good of an actor that she gets lost in the character, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
is there anyone I'd like to see? I mean, I don't know. Maybe if they I hadn't given that any thought, so I don't think I have a good answer for this one. And again, a part of me is like, I'm not sure it matters so much in this series because they can kind of cast almost anyone.
They can, and unless they're playing a human, you're not going to really know who they are. Like we got to see Jermaine Clement in here, and
Right, that's true.
Edie
Yeah,
Falco
right.
basically playing the new general.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
certainly, Jamie Clement was a highlight for in terms of the scenes that he's in. Right, he's a joy to see. So that was kind of fun, and he gets to be the one of the sympathetic humans ish, right? Like you sort of you like his character more than a lot of the. I heard that the guy that gets ripped in half is coming back for the third one, though.
oh,
Whatever
is
that
he?
is. So I guess
Is
he's
he
having
gonna be an Avatar too?
or maybe he'll be like a cyborg or something because I think it was just really his
oh,
arm that got ripped off. So maybe he'll
oh,
just have like
okay.
I can't 100% remember, but I thought I heard he was coming back. So I mean, maybe yeah, if they bring in more interesting human characters or something, I'd be interesting to see where they go. I mean, I guess the titles have been released. I'm not sure. The because I know Michelle Yeoh is going to be in the next one, I think. So I mean, I'm always
Mm-hmm.
happy to see Michelle Yeoh in something, so I'm good with that. Um, but what are the titles? I thought I had them here. They've released the names of the. Maybe not. Maybe they have not confirmed what the names.
David Thewlis is supposed to be in one of the sequels too.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm certainly. Yeah. I mean, again, he's an actor I like seeing, so why not? I wonder if we'll see them or if they'll be avatars. I guess that'll still be a
So
long ways off.
I guess my next question is of the Cameron regulars, who would you like to see? Like, would you love to
Mm.
see Arnold Schwarzenegger as an Avatar creature?
That's a good question. I was trying to think back to. I mean, he got Kate Winslet. Could he get Leo to come back for one?
I doubt he could get Leo to do one of those
Yeah,
movies.
probably not. Maybe he could get Billy Zane. I don't know.
I bet he
Um,
could get Billy Zane. He could get Michael Bean. He could get
he should
Lance
get his.
Hendrickson.
Um, yeah, no, maybe he should get. Oh, why am I blanking? This is embarrassing. Uh, the unsinkable Molly Brown.
Kathy Bates.
Kathy Bates. She would be. I love
Yeah.
Kathy Bates. Why did I forget her name? She. I could see her playing a role, either as one of the humans or as an avatar. That could be awesome. I could see Kathy Bates. Thinking about who he's worked with in the past.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I don't think this should have been nominated for Best Picture, and I think you're right. Had it been like a summer release, it wouldn't have got nominated, and it definitely would not have gotten nominated if it was just like 5 films. Like if they were just doing 5 movies.
Yeah, because it didn't make the director list, right? So
I don't even remember what all it got nominated for, but I know its only win was visual effects, which it deserved.
Yep, it definitely. Yeah, so I think it was mostly technical awards, I think, besides Best Picture. But yeah, I really felt like if you were gonna give a cultural phenom blockbuster one of the slots, Top Gun already filled that spot, right? And felt a little more because of the cultural impact. And I'm, to be honest, not a huge fan of Top Gun Maverick, but I can recognize
you're I'm not the only one, because I like the movie.
Yeah.
But people who love it have been giving me crap. They're like, it's a masterpiece. I'm like, it's a very entertaining movie. I enjoyed it, but I do not love it. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I like it more than the first Top Gun, but I don't love it.
Yeah, you and I are 100% on the same page. But I definitely saw that one filling that spot.
Yeah. I got all the praise it got. Like everyone was like, okay, it made all this money. It was again that word, 4-quadrant blockbuster. People went out and saw it, which to me, I was shocked, because I was like, who is a Top Gun sequel made for? But apparently right?
Exactly.
but yeah, but I was like, it totally deserved the Best Picture nomination. I wouldn't even be mad if it won, but I don't think it's going to.
I might not have been too happy if it won, but like I said, I was. But this one always felt like it was just sort of thrown into the mix, and it didn't feel like it really earned it. Like in terms of the story not being that original, in terms of the performances not necessarily, really. I guess, especially in a year where they did choose to honor a film that was truly unique and very original, and just like very little that we had seen before. And Avatar: The Way of Water, while an enjoyable movie and I had a good time at it, and I'm not one of the haters who was poo-pooing it, I just did not feel like something we hadn't seen before. So I just. Yeah, it definitely deserved technical recognition for the artistry, all of that, because it is a great achievement that way. But I'm just not sure that it was. It certainly wasn't one of the 10 best films of the year. And even from trying to sit back and be objective and say, is this culturally one of the 10 movies that is the most impactful for 2022? I'm not sure. I think that it is. But again, I'm saying all this, but I liked the film and I enjoyed it. I've watched it twice now, and both times I enjoyed it. So, not trying to be overly negative.
I mean, I would take it out. There are 4 movies on this Best Picture list I would have taken out. I would have only kept
those. We all have those ones.
There's only 6 that I would have kept in there.
Yeah, I could think of a few that got overlooked, but
but
that's part of the fun of the Oscars, is talking about what they got wrong, right?
What they got wrong, what they got right.
Part of what makes it fun, right?
I think this past year, though, it was more of them getting things right.
They did not,
for the most part.
Yeah, they don't, a stopped clock or whatever, right?
Because regardless of what you think of Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's a movie you can see winning Best Picture, even though it's not a typical Oscar movie.
Yeah.
And it's also going to be that movie generations to come. Someone will say, "Well, that's the movie that got me into filmmaking," or "That's the
Yep.
movie that made me want to be in movies, or made me want to work in movies, or made me want to talk about movies."
Yeah. I always
And
joke that it was in my lifetime, the Oscars have picked my favorite movie of that year 3 times, and one of them was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
oh wow, okay, what were the
That's
other
it. Oh
two?
no, it was it. No, no, sorry, 4 times. 4 times, because I always forget the year I was born. The Godfather one, and so I have to include that
Okay,
one as well.
but Coppola didn't win Best Director that year.
Oh, Incapital is a great movie too, but
It is, it is, yeah.
so, yeah, it's hard to
It's
slide it too much, but oh well.
it's crazy they were up against each other all the time. It that's a story I'll share for another day. But
We should be talking about Avatar. So, I could have, like I said, I felt like, as much as I think in many ways this one fixes some of the complaints that I would have had about the first Avatar, in some ways the first Avatar still felt more like a Best Picture nominee that year. It still felt more like a real, like, this is a game changer kind of a movie. This is like something we haven't seen before kind of a movie, right?
mhm.
Um, and and this one did not feel that way for me. But in some ways, I think maybe it's a better movie. Like, and there's things about it that improve on what he did. I think he learned from some of the criticisms that there were in the first movie, and he improved some things.
Well,
So good for
I
him.
know with the white savior aspect, like I know that like Cameron himself has like donated a lot of money to indigenous tribes across the world and like done research, and also like he's a very big component on the environment, and in fact
Yeah.
like most of the cast and crew ate a vegan diet while they were working on the movie, except for a handful of guys who apparently had their own little tent for the people who ate meat.
It's I again, I think that his heart is in the messages of these movies are their heart is in the right place. It's just sometimes you go, it's a little cringy the way they execute it, right? I think that's
Yeah.
been some of the issue with the Avatar movies. Is it's like, yeah, I get you're trying to do the right thing, but yeah.
Well, I guess also it's coming from a white man's perspective too, so there's always going to be
Yeah.
that, oh, okay, guy, okay.
Yeah, but
Because,
I like, go ahead.
had Avatar been made 30, 40 years ago, there were, yeah, even 30 or 40 years ago, there'd probably be less of that kind of complaint on it, because there
No, for
were
sure.
not as many opportunities for non-white men to make movies.
Right.
Like it's still a struggle now, but we do have other voices in filmmaking now besides like, so there are
Yeah.
people to tell these stories. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think on a narrative and like all on that aspect of the messaging, I think works better in this one, even though it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But I think the first movie is still earns that best picture nomination more so because of like its cultural impact and us not seeing anything like that. Because up to Avatar, other than like motion capture that was used in live action movies, it was terrible technology. Like all those Zemeckis movies, and it wasn't
Yeah.
good. It was like it didn't look real at all. Whereas,
Right.
in these movies, the humans look like human. They don't even look like they're animated. They look like they're in a live action movie.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, technically the film is breathtaking. Narratively, the films are okay and entertaining. Like, they're not bad movies. I mean, I have some sort of specific critiques, but they're not bad movies. And um it's just, the stories aren't great. And I mean, maybe there's a certain amount of, I think that we all there are certain stories, certain characters, certain franchises, certain worlds that we each that speak to us in a certain way that maybe
Mm-hmm.
we embrace more than, and maybe if they don't speak to in that way, then those films don't work for you in the same way. So whether it's Top Gun or Star Wars or, you know, any of the superhero movies, like I fully understand that a big part of where a lot of our love for some of these franchises comes from is an emotional resonance that isn't necessarily about the quality of the film. And perhaps the Avatar movies just aren't, maybe I'm just not connecting with the characters in the way that I connect with other franchises that tend to really charge me up, right? And so that might not necessarily be a quality thing. It might just be a personal preference thing, right? And maybe if I was one of those people who just became obsessed with Pandora and you know, the worlds that he was creating, maybe this movie would have resonated for me even more, and maybe I would you know, forgive the script's plainness or predictability more if it was characters that I was personally more invested in, and worlds that I was personally loved more. So I recognize that a lot of this is personal and personal preference, and that's fine too. That's okay, right? Like we all have the worlds that we love and the films that we love that maybe better or worse than other films that we don't love because they're just not hitting us in the same way, right?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with it not just being a personal thing, but you also talked about all these other franchises that maybe people are more drawn to or characters. Some of those is probably because of how old we were when we saw that for the first time, too.
Yeah, that
Because
plays into it.
we were both adults when Avatar came out. So that may have also had a factor in us not emotionally connecting to it, like maybe someone who was a teenager when the first Avatar came out, you know?
Yeah, I
So
mean, when you look at the, you know, sort of generation, the way generations attach to certain franchises, whether it's Harry Potter or Star Wars, you know, they might land differently. Star Wars is a great example because of the timeline on it. Like different generations attach themselves to different parts of
the
the
different
series.
trilogies,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So that
because
has
now
something
the
to do with
prequels are good.
it. Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, there's a recent film that came out. It's apparently a flop, and part of it's because people don't want to see it because of a certain actor
Yeah,
that's in the movie, which I
yeah,
totally get and I understand that's
yeah,
valid.
yeah, it is.
But talking about emotional connection, the heavy marketing of a returning actor playing a character they played 30 plus years ago
Yeah,
played heavily on me because of what young age I was when I saw that movie, and to me that is still maybe not my favorite actor to play the role, but to me he is still a definitive person for that role.
right.
And those two movies have a huge impact on me.
Oh yeah, I'm with you there, and I think some of that speaks to, um, you know, some of that speaks to it for me. And I know we're not talking about that movie, but again, it's like whether or not the characters. I think you might be just more open to, you know, really experiencing movies that are good, or you know, but not. And I'm not commenting on that movie, but you just might be more open to it if the characters are people that you are characters that you connect with more, or that you have a love for, or you have some sort of like passion for in some way, whether it's nostalgia or that their stories have resonated with you over time.
Hmm.
um, and so I think, you know, you're certain, like a lot of it is like, I don't think we can divorce, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think we can divorce ourselves um from the emotional experience and the subjective part of that. You know, I think we want to be able to say things are objectively good or bad when it comes to art, and art in the loose way, like we are talking about mega, you know, uh, industries here, mega billion dollar industries here, but you know, it's still a form of art, and I think that we can't divorce ourselves from the fact that there is a truly subjective and personally emotional connection to certain stories or less to others. And I think for me, the Avatar movies have just never connected on that personal level in the way that other franchises have. So I can appreciate them for what they are and what they offer and enjoy them, but they're probably not going to hit me in the same way that Indiana Jones or Star Wars or DC movies are going to, because those movies hold a special place in my heart. That's different, right? Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And yeah, we all like, and people are like, well, this movie is objectively bad or this movie is objectively good. I mean, very few people, because most people I know can't even say that because they're going from it more subjective. Like, we could sit back and be like, okay, well, this movie was technically well made from like a filmmaking standpoint, but it doesn't mean we love the movie, because we still have that personal and subjective opinion. And we can also be like, yeah, this movie's not the best structurally or narratively, but you know what? It got me.
Yeah.
It got me. I got suckered in. I don't know if it was the performances or the characters or the acting, but and that's just
part of the magic of movies. That's what makes it great. There are people out there who love the Avatar world and are going to love these, and they're going to enjoy that there's 4 more movies, whatever there are, coming out over the next, rest of our lifetimes. And good for them. Like, and I feel great for them. And I mean, I'll enjoy the movies as they come out too. Like I said, I don't dislike them, so I will enjoy them. But good for those people who are going to line up and cry and be emotionally moved by these. And I'm happy for them that they have that, in the same way that I'm happy for me that I have the franchises and the artists and the actors and the directors whose films I love when they come out, right? Like, that's great. That's part of what makes movie going so wonderful, is that we get this emotional response to it that, moves us and excites us and makes us teary, makes us laugh, makes us scared, all of those like wonderful things, right? And they're not all going to land for all of us, but good on those movies that land for some of us. Great. That's great.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I don't love these movies, but I will go see every single one of these in the theater, especially if James Cameron's the director, because I know that it's going to be a well-made film, regardless of how sloppy it is, regardless of how clunky the dialogue is, regardless of how icky the execution of these well-intentioned environmental gentrification stories are. I know at the end of the day, James Cameron, no matter what we think of him as a person, as an artist, he puts his money where his mouth is, and it's all there on camera. And there's not many people in his stature that are able to do what he can do.
No, and he's clearly tapped into something. People want to go see these movies, they go see these movies. So that's great. And, I think it's, I don't want to rain on people's parade. I think I don't want to sit here and tell someone that they shouldn't like a movie or they like it too much or anything like that, because that's just, so just enjoy it. And I'm, and I, like I said, I enjoyed them and I'm glad I got to see it. I'm not sitting down and rewatching it 10 times like I do with some of my favorite movies, but I'm glad there's, for people out there who do feel like this one is that for them, great. Like, they can watch it now on Disney Plus, or they can buy it on digital and watch it as many times as they want. And I think that's exciting and that's great. And I know that when the 3 comes out, I bet you'll be able to go back to the cinema and watch re-releases of Avatar and Way of Water and experience them on the big screen again. And, that's exciting, right? So good on them.
Yeah. Do you have any other final thoughts on the movie itself, or James Cameron, or the franchise?
I think I've covered most of probably what I would say about it. I um, you know, it's one of those experiences that I shared with my family, um, and we could talk about. So that's again a great thing that was nice to do together. It is the kind of film that I think, despite being in some ways like good on Cameron again for this. Like this is a pretty sci-fi, it shouldn't be the kind of movie that is, or the kind of story that like, but it is. And so good on him for creating something that can reach out to almost every audience. And again, not everyone's going to love it, and I know a lot of people who didn't bother to see it in the theaters and might catch it now that it's streaming, but didn't have any sort of passion to see it. But I certainly would say to someone, yeah, I mean, if you want to watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. Like, I think in the end, you won't regret having watched it, right? And so, and now if you struggle, you can break it into chunks and watch, watch it in 3-hour installments or break it in half. And I mean, I always laugh at people though who say that it's too long of a movie, because those are the same people who will binge a whole season of a show over the course of like,
A weekend,
24
yeah,
hours or less. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So I'm always like, you can sit there and watch it all.
yeah. It's a movie. It's well worth your time, and like you said, it's on Disney Plus or Max here in the States. It's on 2 streaming
Okay.
services. So you can break it up if you want to. And yeah, if you can watch a whole season of whatever reality
Yeah.
crap that's
Right.
on Netflix that people are watching, you can watch a 3-hour movie because that whole season's longer than 3 hours.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And so yeah, no, it's great that I'm glad that it was successful. And yeah, I'll definitely look forward to the next one. I can imagine. So I remember when Avatar came out, I did pick up the DVD. That's how long ago it was that it came out. And I think I watched it a few times, but it wasn't the kind of film I revisited every year or like or multiple times like I did with other films that I did. But honestly, I could say that it was a long time since when I rewatched it again for to prepare myself for The Way of Water. That was the first time I'd watched it in probably a decade or almost.
Hmm.
And I could probably predict that I might not watch either of them again until 2025 and getting ready for the third one. Like, I'm not sure I'm going to rush out and watch either one again until it's time to sort of gear up for the next one. That's probably what'll happen. Who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe someone will want to watch it with me and I'll say, okay, sure, let's throw it on. But yeah,
that'll probably be the same for me. It is not going to get the rotation that Aliens and Terminator 2 get,
right.
or even The Abyss. It's just not going to get that rotation. But I hope with, because I hope with like The Way of Water coming out and doing as well as it does, that they finally do give The Abyss and True Lies like this Blu-ray 4K
Right.
release,
Right.
because those have been incredibly hard to find to watch, and that's crazy.
It is crazy because they've remained popular movies, I think, generally. But it's sometimes surprising to me how hard it is to find. Like right now in Canada, it's impossible to get a copy of this is this is only tangentially related because it's his ex, but the movie Strange Days.
Oh
It's
yeah, that
not
is
on
so
any
hard.
streamer in Canada. It's not available for purchase
Yeah,
anywhere. I could find
yeah.
like a Region 3 disc on Amazon. Like it was not something that I'm like, how is that movie, which is getting a little bit of a cult resurgence from stuff I
Hmm.
read online, how is that movie not available somewhere? Right?
So I found it on DVD.
Wow.
An in-law was giving away their DVDs,
Oh my
because we were
God.
having this problem too, and I saw it, and I was like, I'm taking this one because this movie is like literally nowhere. There's no digital copy, and the
Right.
world. And then I watched it for New Year's Eve this
Right.
past year,
Good New
and
Year's
then
Eve
like
fix.
literally the next day, it's like Strange Days is streaming on HBO Max, and like the world blew up on social media that Strange Days,
Yeah.
or at least on film Twitter, that Strange Days you could stream on HBO Max.
So Max is only available in the US,
Yeah,
and most of the stuff goes to other streamers around the world, but for some reason that's not one of the films that's getting played on any other streamers elsewhere. So
that's
unfortunately, I
crazy.
just can't. I think I have an old VHS copy somewhere. I'm gonna have to go dig that out and find a VHS player to play it
Well, I
on.
watched it and I hadn't seen it since the either the late 90s or early
Yeah,
2000s. I can't remember when I rented it, but I
right,
was in high school or junior high. I
right,
know I was young. And I was
right.
like, wow, this movie's really good. I know it was a flop, but I'm
Yeah.
like the stuff it's saying is still relevant
Oh
today.
yeah.
Like I was like, dang.
And what a cast too. What a great
I know
cast.
that's like yeah, that's fairly young Ray Fiennes, Angela Bassett being a badass because she didn't get to be Storm because Catherine Bigelow was supposed to do a X-Men movie
Okay.
that Cameron was producing. But yeah, it's a great, and of course Michael Wincott as I guess he's always the '90s bad guy.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and
Yeah, I need to try to track it down, or hopefully, because it is getting a bit of a cult resurgence, I'm hoping that eventually somewhere will pick it
well,
up.
well, maybe like Arrow or Shout Factory will do
Yeah.
a disc of it or something.
Criterion should do it. That would be so cool for them. I don't know why they're not doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think a lot of her movies, other than like Point, well, of course they're newer movies, but I think other than Point Break and Near Dark, like it's
Well,
hard to
Hurt
find.
Locker is still
Yeah,
like
that's
it's
what I
not.
meant. Her
Yeah,
Locker, Zero Dark 30, those aren't hard to
yeah,
find, but like I think Blue Steel is also another one that's hard
yeah. I
to
probably
locate.
haven't been looking for that one, but you might be right. Yeah. Anyways, we got off on a tangent there.
Well, this sort of related because it was from his ex-wife, and
That's
he wrote and produced Strange Days, so he's connected to that
yes, he
movie.
is. Yeah. All right. Well, no, it's getting back to Avatar. I'm glad that I had a chance to, and it's sort of an excuse to rewatch it, because I might not have sat down and rewatched it again, but I'm glad I did, because again, I still enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I was able to you know have a good experience with it again, and not have the second viewing be, I was a little bit apprehensive that maybe in the second viewing I'd be bored or whatever, but I wasn't. So
Well,
that's
that's good because that's always I hate when that happens. The opposite. Like I love when I watch a movie the first time and maybe I'm not clicking with it, but
yeah,
then the next time I watch it and I'm like, oh, I get it. But I hate
yeah,
when I go see a movie. So, like the classic example is the first Suicide Squad. At the time when I saw it, it's all I needed, right? I just
right,
needed to be entertained for 2 hours.
right.
But then when I tried to rewatch it at home, I was like, this movie's a mess.
The one for me is Independence Day. So
Oh, wow.
I remember going to like a midnight screening. It was like back when they're like we're actually at midnight. Like you'd have to wait for
Hmm.
like it'd actually be 12:01 for them to be able to show the movie. And I went with friends, and we were young, and we were like, barely old enough to be out so late, and just had such a great time. And I told friends, "Oh, this movie's so much fun." And we went to see it a few weeks later and sat down a regular screen. And I'm like, "Oh my god, this movie's not very good at all." But it was all about that like opening night experience, and like having just being tired and all the rest of it, right? So yeah, I hate that when that happens too. It's so disappointing. But then sometimes it happens the other way, where you watch a movie and yeah, it doesn't click with you, but then you see it again later and you're like, oh wow, like now I'm getting what's so great about this. And it's nice when that happens, for sure.
Well, thank you for agreeing to take 3 hours of your time to rewatch this movie to discuss the director's new film that we've covered. And I'm glad it was not torturous for you.
No.
And like you, I look forward to more endeavors in Pandora as long as James Cameron is there to tell it. I would like for him to do something else, but if this is what he wants to do the rest of his life, then more power to him.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It was a fun time. It's always fun to talk about movies.
Absolutely. I love having you as a guest. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm envious that it's not 1,000 degrees where you are, because we have heat advisories every day. There was a former coworker friend I know that's visiting in Canada right now, and they were talking about, like, yeah, I could go outside and not have a heat stroke. I was like, oh, must be nice.
Well, we are on fire. I don't know if you've been hearing about that.
I did not know Canada's on fire. That's not good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because of the air quality in like Detroit, New York City. That's right.
Exactly. That's because we're on fire and burning. Even though it's not so bad out on my end of the country anymore.
Well, that's good.
I'm bad here, but it's more in the east now, and but it's still, still said we no, but it's fortunately been quite pleasant to be outside, especially today. So I'm glad. I'm sorry to hear that you're stuck indoors in the air conditioning, because that's no fun in the summertime.
Yeah, it just gets too hot, and in our particular area, the humidity is just disgusting. Like, you go outside and your glasses fog up, or you just feel how sticky it is. It's just.
Well, and this is all tied into James Cameron and his environmental message.
Yeah, we got to do better. We got to do better. All of us.
We do. We do.
But have a great weekend, and
you too.
Let me know if you like. I'm going to try. Let me know if you like Asteroid City. I don't think I'm going to be able to see it this weekend.
Okay, I will. No.
So, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.